Hi guys, so last time we looked at the really unique group GOT7, but today we're looking at one of the groups that are slowly becoming one of my favourite in K-pop, 17. So 17 are one hell of a talented group. They're predominantly known for their flawlessly synchronised dancing routines, but they're also kind of a dark horse and secretly good vocal group, with two of the best singers in K-pop, but we'll get to those guys. Also, a lot of these guys have a very similar vocal ability. Like, they're all good singers, but there isn't a huge amount of difference between them. So ranking them is going to be kind of tricky, and if you have your own opinion, feel free to comment it, because it will be a bit interchanged to mine, and that's totally fine. I also thought going in it might go like hip-hop unit members, and then performance unit, and then vocal unit members, but that isn't fully how it's panned out. So without further ado, let's get into the 17 vocal ranking. So when I say that 17 are a good, strong vocal group, Vernon being last shows this. So while he's not like an amazing singer by any means, for a main rapper whose focus is rapping, he does okay. Let's watch.
내게 기대 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 너 행복하고 아름다운 너 그리고 난
So Vernon doesn't sing a lot. I haven't heard him sing a whole ton of stuff. Which kind of suggests to me that he doesn't really have a lot of confidence in his voice. I've noticed a lot of the time he tends to joke around a little bit, so he doesn't have to take singing super seriously, which, as I say, suggests to me that he's not really very comfortable singing in any kind of way. Having said that, he does open Don't Wanna Cry, and it's kind of lower pitched. It's nice. It's a nice relaxed chest voice, so it shows that he does have a sense of melody and rhythm if he wants to. He just doesn't really stray much further away from his comfortable chest range. He doesn't go much further away from his speaking pitch, which, as I say, suggests he doesn't have a lot of vocal practice, doesn't have a great deal of range, can't do much in the way of colours or versatility, but he can kind of sing on pitch, and he has a decent sense of melody and rhythm, obviously being a rapper. So yes, he's not an amazingly strong singer, he doesn't sing a great deal, he doesn't have much confidence. There is a little bit of potential there, and he can, maintain a good, solid, light chest voice. So, Vernon, not exactly a wonderful singer, but I've heard a lot worse as worse people in groups go. So already there's a bit of a jump in quality. Mingyu, for somebody that focuses specifically on rap and doesn't really sing at all, he's got a somewhat unexpectedly nice, pleasant singing voice, so let's have a look. So just like Vernon, Mingyu hasn't got a super confident vocal delivery. He doesn't sing a great deal, and he can't seem to do a huge amount with it. However, what gives him an edge over Vernon is the fact that he sings with a predominantly lighter tone. His natural speaking voice isn't as light as a singing voice. That shows he has the ability to change the colour of his voice to make a specific tone. That is a very good sign, because it means that he has the ability to change his vocal colour and vocal tone and vocal delivery. Yes, it's not super versatile. Yes, he only has that one particular style that he does sing in, along with the raspier rap tone he could implement. But yes, so basically his voice isn't hugely well-rounded. It's not very well practiced again. But it sounds balanced, it sounds okay, it sounds comfortable. As I say, it sounds lighter than Vernon's, which means he knows how to change the colour of his voice and lighten the tone, which is a good sign, and it means he's got potential if he wanted to actually work on his range or utilise more difficult vocal parts in the future. I think his voice could do that, as it has an ability to get into different parts of it. But right now he doesn't do too much with it and can't access too many parts, but the lighter tone suggests to me that he could if he really wanted to. So yeah, a nice, balanced, decent, light, pleasant sounding voice, but somewhat unremarkable. Now from here it gets kind of tricky. So everyone kind of from this point for the next few entries has a really similar voice and has a really similar ability. Just to me, of these people, the 8 probably has the least versatile voice, but only slightly. Let's have a look. So the 8 is blessed with a kind of higher sitting, higher chest voice, so that means he can sing higher, more difficult transitional lines in a lot of 17 songs. The way he sings is predominantly with a high forward placement, and because of that his voice is kind of limited. Yes, he can sing decent chest notes that are kind of high-ish, but he never really veers very far from his tessitura. The middle of his chest voice is where he predominantly stays, and yes, it's higher sitting, yes, it sounds good in higher areas, and it's quite light and flexible, but he doesn't veer away from there too much. He doesn't utilise much in the way of mix, voice, or many power vocals, or, again, too many colours or much versatility in his delivery. He just kind of stays where he stays comfortable, singing kind of from here with a little bit of nasality now and again, and yes, it's high and can do transitional lines, but there isn't a great deal to it. It won't wow anybody, it hasn't got too many avenues it can go. Yes, it's got a little bit more range than Mingyu and Vernon, hence why he places a little bit higher, but his versatility does let him down, and because he does kind of just stay where he stays. So an all-round decent singer, technically not like fantastic, and doesn't do too much with it, but he has a nice pleasant voice that works in decent high keys of 17's music. So yeah, you can't really knock the 8's voice too much, but it leaves a lot to be desired, but it's decent enough. So, Jun is another member of the 17 performance unit, and again he has a very similar voice to the 8 and a light delivery. To me, he's got a slightly better technique than the 8, so let's just watch. So Jun also has a voice that only really stays in one area when he sings, and that place is the middle of his chest voice, just like the rest of the performance unit seemingly. The only difference between Jun and the 8 is the 8 has a naturally higher sitting voice. Jun doesn't really, it's still kind of light and soft, but it's not in the same sort of key. However, Jun can sing in similar keys to the 8. That's because he implements sort of a breathy, lighter technique rather than kind of staying exactly where his chest voice naturally would be. He does implement a little bit of technique here and there. Yes, he doesn't have a great deal of range with it, and his instrument is still developing, and he could do a lot more with a bit more chord closure. Like, he's got, I think, pretty good potential for range should he kind of veer away from the breathiness and add more of a connected sound. However, because of the breathiness, he sounds stable, he sounds reliable, sounds consistent, and does sound very light and very youthful, particularly in this area of the voice where his voice wouldn't go as easily as someone like the 8. So while they have the same sort of voice and same sort of vocal delivery, I think Jun's trying a little bit harder to do the same thing, therefore kind of doing more in the way of technically impressive stuff. So yeah, again, not an incredible vocalist by any means, but he's got a nice sound, a nice tone, and I think there's potential there, possibly a little bit more than the 8 would have, just based on how he sings right now. So to me, the performance team almost seem to sing in the lower middle keyed part of 17's music, and once again Dino fits here absolutely perfectly. Let's watch. So just like Jun in the 8, Dino tends to stay in his lower kind of more comfortable chest range. And again, it's light, it's sweet, it has a nice agile sound, but once again, not with a huge amount of range or too much versatility. The thing that makes Dino a little bit different to me is he has almost a little bit more chord closure practice, and he sings a little bit more connected than Jun and the 8 do. Because of that, it feels like he can beef his sound up a little bit more. In Highlight where he goes, "Akareda budingoya," that has more chest dominance to it. He kind of stays a little bit bigger, and I feel like he can do slightly lower tones than the other two guys can. Not super low, his voice is kind of high and light, but it's got more beef up quality to it. As well as that, he can also go up into a little bit of a mix, not as developed as the guys coming up, but his mix is there, it does exist. So to me, he's got a light, versatile voice, which can implement more of a chord closure style, and has a little bit more to it, and it has a good potential of range. Again, it's not quite there yet, and it is still developing, but I think he's got a little bit more to offer right now, and it will only increase in the future. So yeah, a pretty decent singer. Okay, so this guy's voice caught me really off guard, and this is probably another vocal jumping quality. Now, Wonwoo is one of 2 baritones in 17, and he has a really, really nice voice. Let's just watch.
짐이 생겼다 너를 지켜보고 설레고 우습게 그 천일 동안
가서 래퍼의 감미로운
널 보아도 슬프지 않게 그저 바라 이해할 수 있을까 나의 태양 우리 마지막이 언제지 알지 못하더라도 Yeah, yeah, You're going too fast, baby I don't know what's wrong, baby 깨알지 못해도 우린 늘 그렇듯 웃음꽃 피워요 참 보게 됐어 널 원하지 않고 견딜 수가 있을까
So Wonwoo is known for his deep voice, and straight away that gives his voice a uniqueness, because in 17 there are 1,000 tenors, like there are 2 baritones and loads of tenors, so this means that his voice has a quality that the rest of the group just doesn't have. And it can navigate pitches that the rest of the guys just simply can't operate in, because obviously a baritone has a thicker, deeper voice, and tenors sing a little bit higher. So Wonwoo is operating in this kind of key that people can't really do very well or have more of an unnatural time to do. So he really excels here and really shines. His voice is really warm, it's deep, it's full, and it's very mature sounding. As well as that, he has really good technique. He can actually implement a more breathy technique to bring his voice a little bit higher, a little bit lighter, and he can utilise some pretty decent high notes for a baritone voice. He does belt on occasion. It's not the most comfortable thing I've ever heard in my life, and he sounds better when he sings a bit lower, a little bit more relaxed, but he can sing full, can sing heavy, and he also has a really nice vibrato to go along with all of that. So yeah, his technique's really solid, he has really good low notes that pretty much no one else can really implement at all in 17, and his voice is quite surprising because you don't expect it from a rapper who doesn't really sing a lot in the songs, but there's several clips of him singing and it sounds really good, really full, really strong, can go a bit higher, a bit lighter, good technique, good vibrato. So Wonwoo, actually a really solid singer, and it's a little bit unexpected. Okay, so S Coops was by far the biggest surprise for me. When I first started researching vocals, I knew him as a rapper. I didn't know he had pipes on him, but he does. He's 17, second baritone, and has a really, really good voice. So let's just watch.
얹혀서 입가에 네가 또 맺혀서 입가에 수없이 맴돈 말 울지 말아요 고개 들어봐요 이젠 놀려줄 거예요 오늘도 지치기까지 가끔만 듣기 무서워 어지지만 뭐가 다도 눈 감아도 달라지는 건 없으니까 지금이 느려지고 점점 숨이 막히는 그대 자리를 남겨둔 채로
Right, so S-Cube's technique is a little bit rough around the edges, but there is a lot of things that he can do with his voice. He's got a lot of avenues to it. So firstly, although his voice isn't as deep as Wonwoo's, he still has access to those baritonal low notes that most of 17 just don't have access to. So again, he has a warm, thicker tone, he can sing in these keys, and that's all great and sounds really wonderful. He has a slightly easier time lightening his tone than Wonwoo, again, because his voice isn't quite as low. He can sing in these tenor keys slightly more comfortably if he lightens his vocal tone. He still stays connected, still sounds like he's got a lot to offer, but he can make his voice more youthful, a little bit lighter. Sounds really good technique. As well as that, the most unexpected part of S-Cube's voice is his belt. When he adds more connection and more chord closure, can go really, really powerful. He has a really strong chest dominant mix, and while yes, it can sound shouty on occasion if he's kind of just letting it rip too much, he can hit some really, really powerful notes. A little bit raspy, a little bit mixy, quite heavy, and all of them sound really good, and I was just not expecting them first time I kind of watched a compilation of his. His voice is really interesting, good low notes, decent light higher notes, and an amazing belt that I did not see coming. Yes, it's not quite as developed and mixed as people above him, and he can't go into the 5th octave or anything daft like that, but his voice is powerful. Tons of power, tons of strength, and it's a really good, unexpected voice. Okay, so you may be thinking, surely the vocal unit should be the top 5, no matter what. There shouldn't be someone at number 6 from the vocal unit. And maybe, but I'll address that shortly. To me, I think Jeonghan has a really unique instrument, and I'd like to explore it more.
시간이 지나면 점점 다 잊혀질 수나 있을까요? 하고 그랬으면 좋겠어. 너도 아무렇지 않고 싶은데.
Jeonghan's voice is really interesting. So he sings with a really forward placement, like a really forward facial placement, mixed in with a light tone, which also has a lot of nasality to it. Because of that, his voice sounds really feminine and really interesting and unique and different. That's the main strength Jeonghan's voice has, and it's super unique and super captivating. When he's kind of singing these softer, more emotional, ballady sort of tracks, his voice really shines. It's got a whole lot of character, sounds really interesting, really mesmerising, and he does things with his voice that most people simply don't do. However, that being said, this technique kind of makes you stuck. If you're singing very forward and very nasal without that chest dominant chord closure as a practice base, your voice doesn't have a lot of places it can go into. So his main issue is his versatility. He has next to none. And while yes, he can bring that technique up into a bit of a stronger mix on occasion, that he doesn't do much, but I have heard him doing it, does sound really good. And when he's singing slow songs, he sounds really nice. He doesn't have a lot of avenues in his voice. So while technically he's probably stronger than S-Coops, who has a more of a ragged technique with a lot of avenues, Jeonghan's got one avenue he does very well and very consistently. Maybe a bit pitchy on his day occasionally, it can happen, that happens to everybody. But as I say, his voice lacks a little bit of versatility, but his technique is interesting, it's unique, and that does put him above pretty much everybody else so far, because he is clearly a trained singer. Just, I wish he used a little bit more chord closure sometimes to give us a little bit of a different sound rather than just super feminine and super nasal all the time. But he is a good vocalist. Okay, so Joshua and Jeonghan sing in essentially exactly the same way, and the two are somewhat interchangeable, so if you want to put them the other way around or someone a bit higher, cool, go for it. They sound very similar. But to me, Joshua's voice offers a little bit more.
들릴 때면 고민도 없이 뛰어갔었던 그때 사랑 왜 이렇게 그 수녀가 보고 싶을까 위험해 난 손을 넘을 것만 같아.
So Joshua also implements this really super forward nasal technique, which again makes his voice sound feminine. What he does have, however, is a slightly thicker tone underneath and slightly less of a nasal approach than Jeonghan does use. So yes, while naturally he sings again in this exactly same way as Jeonghan with the nasal forward placement, he doesn't do it to the nth degree like Jeonghan does. He has a little bit more to his voice, and his voice has a little bit more to play with. Now, while he doesn't do it a great deal, underneath that he's got more of a masculine tone that he can get to should he want to, as he does have slightly more chord closure when he sings, because the technique he's implementing sounds like it's slightly less just built in and natural than Jeonghan's does, who does it all the time by default. Joshua is doing it by default, but you can tell sometimes he's getting there, and there's something underneath he can use should he want to not sing in this slow, balladeering style. I feel like Joshua, if he wanted to implement more of a chord closure technique, has that in him. He doesn't do it much. I don't have as much evidence for it as I would like, but I know that he does have it in him, and his voice does have a masculine quality below the feminine notes that he tends to utilise. So yeah, Joshua is a good singer. Him and Jeonghan are very, very similar. However, I think Joshua does have more to play with should he ever want to access those parts of his voice. Now, I know that Hoshi isn't in the vocal unit, but I genuinely believe the only reason that he isn't is because he's a phenomenal dancer and leads the performance unit. He's still a lead vocalist in 17, and for very good reason. Let's just take a look.
찾고 싶어 흔들 때 하늘과 햇살처럼 시간 거의 날 만지던 네 손길 작은 손톱까지 다 서 있지만 꺼진 불꽃처럼 다 들어가 버린 내 기억의 친구가 된 poison I know I can't take it no more 시간과 함께 우린 닮아가
So Hoshi's voice doesn't operate in the same areas as Jeonghan and Joshua. He doesn't sing in this kind of part here. He sings a little bit lower, but he sings with a lot more chord closure and a lot more of his feeling of his chords together. Because of that, his sound is much more connected and much beefier. When you sing with a more connected style, that kind of gives your voice practice in all manner of areas as to having a more full sound. It means it can go into higher areas, it can do more powerful sounds and more powerful tones, and also has a more of a variation of colours, because if you only stay nasal and stay forward, that's all you can do, that's all you ever do. But if you stay with a more neutral larynx and more of a belty sound, you can utilise your natural tone just like Hoshi does. Because of that, his voice is very robust, it's more powerful than the other guys I mentioned down below, and he has around the kind of F4, G4 range, a really nice, strong, powerful sound. Yes, his mix isn't super developed and he does strain on occasion to hit these notes. His voice has a unique tone, it sounds strong up here, the chord closure massively helps with that, and his voice does sound a lot stronger than Jeonghan and Joshua's in my opinion, and there is more he can do with it. In songs when he's singing, his voice sounds, it's got more to go into, it's got more tones, more colours, and it's much, much more varied just because of the technique that he implements. So Woozi is the vocal team leader, and he's another person with a higher, lighter sitting voice. However, he's a very good singer with a very unique tone, so let's just watch.
함께 웃을 수
So as I say, Woozi is another person with a really light, flexible, agile voice. His main issue is he struggles a bit with projection. He can't get super mega loud with his voice because of kind of how small the instrument is, because he's quite a small guy too. Because of that, his voice doesn't sound mega powerful when he's staying too full. However, he has two main parts of his voice that make him such a fantastic singer. Firstly, he is emotive as hell. When he sings, particularly in a slower ballad style or sometimes in a more rocky 17 song, his voice just oozes feeling and oozes passion and oozes emotion. That's partially due to the very unique colour he has and the unique tone and kind of how light and flexible it sits and how much it can just kind of emote and the feelings it can generate. Another thing that makes his voice really good is he's got the third best mix in 17, I would say. He can get into kind of the B4, C5 area, utilising a really head-dominant mix, and kind of get into these areas that most of the group don't really sing in. Most people kind of stick in the middle of the fourth octave or a little bit lower. Woozi is one of the ones that can get higher. He also has a really, really high head voice, because it's so light though. It's more of a falsetto. But he has been documented doing some really, really high notes, as well as, I believe, whistle tones. So that means he's got a really extensive range, really good technique, and on top of that, with the emotive delivery, unique tone, really good range, and decent versatility, particularly in different styles of 17 songs, Woozi has a really good, really solid, well-rounded instrument, and of the light singers, his voice has by far the most to it.
손을 넘지 못한 나를 사랑해줘 더해
Okay, so big jump in quality time. These two are 17's vocal powerhouses. Now, you can order them kind of either way you want, depends on what you really look for in a vocalist, but for me, DK is the power singer. He is marginally less good in technique, however, he's still fantastic, so let's just watch him.
Someone tell me what should I do 고맙다 고맙다 또 고맙다 뿐이지만 내 맘에 널 그리며 살아 언젠가 나를 위해 꽃다발을 전해주던 그 소리야 바로 그리 말이 많고 기분은 뭐야 어떡해 오늘 잡고 늘 영원토록 그대의 하나같이 그린 I feel good 오렌지 빛깔 그림 I found love 내 눈에 너가 그쳐다 요렇게 바라봐질까봐 그게 불안해서
Okay, so DK is the power singer of 17. He has your classic power tenor belter voice. It is so fantastic, right? So basically, the things that make his voice so good is the technique is consistent the entire way throughout the board. He can sing with this fully chord closure style all over. And that's in his mix, that's in his chest voice, and that is in his upper head voice, but we'll get to that in a second. Another thing that makes him really good is he can sing in multiple styles, multiple genres, and his versatility is off the charts. Okay, so in his chest voice, when he stays fully connected and fully beefed up, his whole voice sounds powerful. His delivery is super big and super robust in the entirety of his range. Even the fourth octave, when he's starting to belt and starting to add a little bit more gravitas to his sound, he can add a bit of rasp, he can keep it straight tone. Either way, it sounds massive. It sounds like it's got unlimited range to go up into. It sounds fantastic. The place where DK's voice is so much better than anybody else's pretty much in 17 is in his mix. Because he sings with a forward, his placement's really forward, but he doesn't sing with a light style, he keeps it heavy and connected. That means that you have such an unlimited range to go into if you implement that technique correctly, like DK does. He can sing these B4, C5 belt areas as easily as most singers can sing D4 and E4s. That's how reliable his upper technique is, and every time he goes into one of these big belts, it sounds a little bit strained, but not bad strain. Strain as all the technique is just so ingrained into his style that he knows exactly what he's doing with it. Another thing that makes DK's voice so good is he is one of two people with any real fifth octave ability, but his fifth octave ability is mask plays head voice or mixed voice. It's so strong up at that G5 and A5 sort of area. It's still massive. It's not a weak little falsetto. It's a really big, like, forward, powerful sound that he does in a lot of songs, so he clearly has it all the time. Yeah, so sorry for going a bit of a rant there. I love this guy's voice. It's technically really strong, it's powerful all the way through his range, it never seems to falter, and has so many avenues, and the second or the second best mix in terms of the power it implements in 17. So yeah, his voice is absolutely unbelievable, and if you ordered him first, I wouldn't be angry at all. So if DK is your power singer, Seungkwan is your technical ballad singer, capable of power vocals as well. That technique really results in one of the best singers in K-pop. Let's just watch. Okay, so while DK might sound slightly more natural and having a higher, more natural, powerful voice in this area, Seungkwan and DK are often trading insanely hard vocal parts in all the 17 songs and operating in exactly the same pitches in the same areas, and that is down to Seungkwan's flawless technique. Okay, so Seungkwan has a naturally more breathy, softer instrument as opposed to DK's powerful, fully chord closured oomph. He had to utilize more of a mixed voice in order to get to these pitches. But the way he did this was because of the breathy style he naturally has. Underneath, he had the chord closure and the knowledge to put all that together, which, as I say, puts the feeling closer to your head voice and implements more of a mixed voice. However, some people's mixed voice is okay in a certain area. Some Kwans can navigate pretty much the whole 4th octave and past the 5th octave as well. His voice, yes, it's soft, and it can sing ballads effortlessly, and the emotion his voice has is captivating and beautiful, and he can do many, many, many things with it. As I say, what makes his voice even more impressive is the fact that he can switch that style and go into this beefier, bigger sound. It's not a weak mix by any means. It's a little bit more head dominant than DK's is, who obviously stays really big and really powerful. Seungkwan operates in exactly the same pitches, not quite as super mega high as DK can go, but around the F5, G5, Seungkwan is still holding his own. And it's not light, it's not weak. It's a breathy yet slightly softer sound, yes, but it's robust, it's powerful, it's flexible, it's versatile. The colours that guy has are insane. As I say, he emotes fantastically. His technique is flawless. Like, his voice sounds like he can go all night, all the time, be it in a slightly more belty configuration that he does have on occasion, be it in this mixio place, or be it in more of a falsetto light style. So yeah, Seungkwan's technique allows him to sing parts that DK sings in similar pitches, despite the fact that his voice isn't quite built for that same area, which means that technically what he's doing is incredibly impressive and incredibly difficult. So yes, as I say, DK and Seungkwan are two of the best vocalists in K-pop, and I just think that DK is naturally better up there, but I think Seungkwan technically is created a more well-rounded instrument. And if you place them the other way around, that is totally fine. They're two of the best vocalists around, and I love them both. Okay, thank you guys very much for watching that episode. It was really fun to make. 17 are a fantastic vocal group, even if it's a little bit under the radar. Next time, we'll be looking at a group that people know are good vocally, which is BTOB. But for now, goodbye.